Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Robbins, and welcome to LPLE from Dialogue FM. We're the podcast that lets you practice listening in English. We speak English slowly and clearly so that you can follow along and understand native English speakers more easily. I'm excited to help you improve your English listening skill, as well as help you learn new vocabulary, grammar, and idioms commonly heard in conversations among native English speakers. If you want to practice listening in English, then we invite you to join our conversation. Hi, Jane.
And hi, Jesse.
After last week's episode, I sent you a text message. And in the text message, I asked if we could focus today's episode on the concept of sarcasm.
Yes.
You're right. You mentioned to me before we recorded this that we did talk about sarcasm before. However, I'd like to revisit this idea, this way of communicating sarcasm somewhat frequently or just every so often because, and I think you agree with this, it's an important and common way of communicating in English. However, it can be very difficult to understand and use. So I guess we can start by trying to define sarcasm, and it's probably easier to define sarcasm with an example, right? So when you and I were looking up the definition of sarcasm, I Google translated or Google researched it, and sarcasm is a noun, and it means the use of irony to mock or convey contempt. There's a lot of complicated words in there, right?
Yeah. It's meant to harm or hurt, and
right.
Sometimes, as you have said, it's used jokingly.
Right. Well, so let's... there's 4 words in here, right? So there's irony, mock, convey, and contempt.
Yeah.
So these 4 words are words that we don't normally use in everyday conversation.
Right.
So the definition of sarcasm is, in and of itself, difficult to understand if you are not a native English speaker. So let's go one by one, leaving irony for the last. So what's a good way to describe mock?
It's to laugh at someone in a negative kind of way, to make fun of, another idiom that we use, to make fun of someone, but not in a complimentary way.
Right.
It's negative.
Exactly. Stop mocking me. Means stop making fun of me, which is another way of saying stop having fun at my expense.
Right.
Right.
Laughing at me
right.
for the sake of someone else's humor.
Right, right. Now, the word convey. Convey is a verb, right? What's a good way to think about convey?
In this case, it's almost acting as a synonym for communicate. But convey means to carry or deliver, and it can even mean transportation.
That's true.
It brings meaning or even physical goods from one place to another. So in this case, it just means to carry a certain meaning.
Yep.
Yeah, or to communicate.
I like that. Absolutely.
A certain meaning.
And then contempt.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's negative. It's a negative feeling, right?
Yes, and disgust
Yeah.
Or a feeling of looking down on someone as being less moral or less, potentially less intelligent, less able.
Disrespectful.
Disrespect, yeah.
Right. So in those three words, mock means to make fun of, convey means to carry a meaning or to communicate a meaning, and then contempt means a negative feeling of maybe perhaps disrespect or something harmful.
Yes.
So in order to do those things, there's irony, right? Now, irony is such a hard word to define. Now, let me ask you this. If you ask 100 people, 100 native speakers, what the definition of irony is, and let's say that 100 people use the word irony or ironic. Oh my gosh, that's so ironic. And you ask them, do you know what that word means? How many would give an accurate description of irony?
I think they might all be partly accurate, but they'd all be different. And I think people would probably, maybe instead of trying to define it, they might resort to just giving some examples.
Right. They would say, oh, it's like this.
And sometimes people do think that irony is the same as sarcasm, but irony has to do with the intention also. Your definition that sarcasm is using irony to communicate the idea of disrespect or dislike or contempt.
Right.
You use it, but irony in and of itself is not meant to convey disrespect or dislike, but it can be used to do it. And I think people confuse them a lot.
Now I see what you're saying. Right. Irony is without positive or negative feeling or intent.
It can be, yes, yeah. I think so.
It's neutral, right?
Yes.
It's an act. It's a way of communicating. If irony is used negatively to harm somebody or to make fun of them, then that is sarcasm.
That's the way I see it.
Okay, I understand. See, now I'm a native speaker, and I am now learning these differences with you, right?
I'm thinking of an example.
Yeah.
In a lot of fashion.
Yeah.
Especially among younger women, but it carries on. You will now today often see, for example, a young woman in a very feminine flowered dress, but she will be wearing maybe combat boots with them.
That's right.
And that's an ironic fashion statement. It's not meant to hurt anyone. It's just an irony that the two would be together. It's considered an ironic outfit that the woman is wearing.
Why specifically?
Probably because the dress is so ultra feminine, maybe even intended to be seductive, maybe normally intended for some special event, but the soldier's boots, the heavy boots, are just the opposite.
Right.
They communicate toughness, masculinity, and so it's the two opposite ideas playing with each other. That forms a kind of irony.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to hurt anyone. It's just a comment, a way of looking at two opposites.
Ironic fashion. You're right. That's very popular here, especially here in the Northwest, in our city of Seattle, along with Portland in Oregon, the state of Oregon.
That's true.
Ironic fashion, both in terms of clothing and hairstyle, makeup, tattoos,
yes,
body art. you could say the same thing. A man could be dressed very professionally, and yet his hairstyle can be very wacky and strange.
That's right. Or he's wearing a baseball cap backwards or something else. Yeah, that's true.
So ironic fashion, in this sense, does not have a negative or positive meaning. It is just a way of doing something to have the exact opposite effect.
Yes.
Right? So sarcasm is doing something but usually has the exact opposite effect in a negative way, right? That way, the way you describe that is so much more helpful for me to understand sarcasm.
Well, it took me a long time because I think I had trouble with irony and sarcasm for a very long time. I confused them, and sometimes I would get my feelings hurt for no reason. But then I began to see irony in art, in fashion, even sometimes in music. And I realized that it's looking at one side in order to see the other side more clearly, in a way.
So you gave an example of sarcasm that I'd like to analyze. It's a very simple example, but how it's used and when we use it is really important. Now, before I give that example, I want to share with the audience my personal feelings about sarcasm and irony as it relates to judging or assessing your own level of English proficiency. Now, the irony is, if I use this standard, then technically I don't fall under the category of being a native English speaker because I did not know the definition of irony and sarcasm.
But I think you felt the difference and noticed it when you heard it.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're right. So when I talk to my language partners, I explained that one of the signs of being a top level English speaker or being close to a native English speaker is understanding sarcasm. If the person learning English can understand sarcasm, then they understand how native English speakers communicate with each other. And if they can understand that, then their English proficiency level is pretty high.
I would agree with that.
Right. And like you said, if they can learn how to use sarcasm, that's also another sign that their English language proficiency is pretty high. Right?
Yes, I think so. And to use it and get the response they expect and communicate the message they mean. Sometimes people, when they try sarcasm, I think this is true even of native speakers, they may get a different response than they expect. And so that's a lack of skill also.
Right. So let's give that example of sarcasm. Okay. So what was the example? Oh, that was...
Oh, yeah. Maybe, for example, you were trying to clean the kitchen floor after having spilled something on it. And while you were cleaning the floor, you knocked something else over and spilled it. And I said, "Nice work, Jesse."
Exactly.
And in fact, it was terrible.
It was the exact opposite. So in that situation, I was doing something. I was cleaning the kitchen floor. Let's call that X.
Yes.
So I was doing X, which is cleaning the kitchen floor. And I did something to make X worse. So I did the opposite of X. As let's say I did negative X. However, you give me what sounds like a compliment, right? If you are a non-native English speaker and they heard you say, "Oh, good work, Jesse," you would be confused, right? Why are you saying good work, Jesse? Clearly he did something wrong here. Mm-hmm. That's sarcasm.
Yes, although probably you would know I was just joking and not really trying to hurt your feelings.
Right, because we're friends. And we both recognize that the situation is funny.
Yes.
Right? It's humorous. And so in that situation, even though sarcasm usually communicates contempt, something negative, something disrespectful, because you and I are friends, I know that you are joking.
That's true too, yes.
Yeah. So in that situation, so I was doing X, I was cleaning the floor. And if I did a good job, you would say, "Oh."
I might say, "Not bad, Jesse."
Oh my God, that's right. That's right. Right. So another use of sarcasm.
A little bit, or at least irony in that case. Because, yeah.
Exactly. So now the not bad usually means pretty good, right?
Pretty good,
right?
yes.
However, it's how you said it, right? So this is another part of the English language that is very difficult to understand. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
Indeed. Now,
how you said that phrase, "Oh, not bad, Jesse," depending on your voice, depending on how you said it, you could sound very dismissive.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you know that I spent all day cleaning the kitchen floor, taking care of all of the difficult stains, all of the dirt in the small corners. And then, does it sound like my marriage? Does it sound like I'm talking about my... It's not.
Sounds as though you have some experience.
My wife is a pro at sarcasm.
Oh, no.
Yeah. No, I love her for it. It's very funny. So let's say I spent all day cleaning the kitchen floor and it looks great. And you come home and you say,
"Not bad."
I would laugh. I would say, "What do you mean not bad? It's great. It looks fantastic." That's a good example of, one, sarcasm. Two, using your voice and your maybe even body language to convey a certain meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could equally say, "Not bad," right? So you can come home and then you look at the floor and say, "Not bad, Jesse." Then I would know that you are impressed.
Yes, I would think it was great.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the words that we're using right now, "not bad," that's a very simple phrase. Or "good job, Jesse," even though I did not do a good job. The words that we are using are very simple words, right? These are very basic vocabulary. However, we are using it in a very high level native English context.
Yeah. And actually we're using vocal skills that it takes a long time to develop because of the way our vowels work and the way we accentuate each word. Of course, every language has a way of doing this, I'm sure. But it's not easy to imitate the way it's done in another language, the highs and the lows. And I know that as a non-native but fluent French speaker, I'm quite careful because I know there are probably some intonations that I won't get exactly right. So I don't use slang too much, even though I know it. And I'm quite careful not to use much sarcasm or irony either.
Yeah.
Because I can't be sure my vocal music is quite right.
Right. I 100% agree. So for me, and you probably agree to this too, you and I consider ourselves to be good at our foreign languages. You're skilled in French.
Yeah.
And I'm skilled in Vietnamese. But like you, I don't use sarcasm or much slang, or any slang rather, when I speak Vietnamese. Because one, it doesn't feel natural. And two, I'm afraid I'm going to misuse it and create a negative situation.
Right.
Now, before I said one of the recommendations I give to people learning English is don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry about mistakes. People understand that, you're learning English, so they might correct you or forgive you. However, there's an exception to that rule. And I think the exception to that rule is when you start to use slang and sarcasm. I would say to people learning the English language, be careful when you use slang and sarcasm, because if you make a mistake, you could actually be very rude.
That's right. And at the very least, you could look funny or ridiculous. You could make people laugh for the wrong reasons.
You could lose credibility.
There you go.
Yeah, you lose credibility.
That's right.
To be on the safe side, we say in English to err on the side of caution, right?
Yes.
Which is to be safe. I refuse to memorize slang. I just don't bother. Like I don't store that information in my brain. It's basically slang in another language is almost useless information.
Yeah, in a pragmatic sense, you're not going to use it, and you very intentionally are not going to. It's fun sometimes I would agree with you, I would never try to learn it, but it's fun sometimes to hear about it, and because it shows something about the way people view things.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. It teaches you something about the mentality of the people. Mm-hmm. But again, it's so tricky to use it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose it's good to know that what the slang is, so that when you hear it, your brain doesn't stop working. You can continue to understand the conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just something I don't bother using. So I realized we talked for going on 25 minutes about this very difficult to understand topic, and I think we just have to continue talking about it from many different perspectives to help those learning the English language how we communicate. You and I, even without knowing it, I think we use sarcasm and irony in our everyday communication.
We probably do. I certainly avoid using sarcasm to hurt anyone.
Right.
Although I will certainly use it, for example, in talking about a third person, mostly about our current president.
Yeah.
But really intense sarcasm can be exceedingly painful to a person.
Right.
And I would be very careful.
Good.
But lighthearted sarcasm, like, nice job.
Exactly.
That would make both of us laugh, probably.
Yeah. Sarcasm among friends, probably okay. That's it.
And even not too serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, not serious at all.
So for everyone listening to this episode, I would highly recommend you go back to the beginning and you listen to this episode again, and not just to make sure you understand what we are saying, but more importantly, to understand how important it is to understand what sarcasm and irony is, and using that as a barometer, as a sign about where your English language proficiency is. And when in doubt, don't do it. Thank you for listening to this episode of LPLE. Let's practice listening in English from Dialogue FM. Subscribe to LPLE on iTunes to hear the latest episodes, or listen to past episodes on our website, dialogue.fm. That's dialog.fm. If you have questions or comments about English, or if you would like for us to use a word, grammar, or idiom in our conversation so you can learn how to use it correctly, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at dialogue.fm or Facebook at facebook.com/dialoguefm.